People think danger arrives loudly. They think mistakes announce themselves with noise, anger, or drama. But the most dangerous choices arrive quietly. They slip into your life when you're tired, lonely, and careful for too long. I lived a quiet life. I followed rules. I avoided trouble. I believed silence would keep me safe. I believed if I did nothing wrong, nothing bad would touch me. I was wrong. This is not a story about passion or temptation. It is not about scandals, secrets, or forbidden romance. It is about consequence. It is about what happens after a choice, not during it. It is about how silence slowly collects interest, like a debt you do not notice until it is too heavy to carry. One small choice can feel harmless in the moment. It can feel like rest, like comfort, like relief. But choices do not disappear when the night ends. They follow you home. They wait in the quiet. They grow teeth. Silence asks for payment. It takes your peace first, then your voice, then your sense of safety. And one day it asks for everything at once. I thought it would end that night. I was wrong. Chapter 1. The Life I Forgot. My name is Laura Bennett. I am 46 years old, and most people would say my life is stable. I wake up early every morning, even on days when my body feels heavy. My alarm rings and my feet touch the floor before my mind is fully awake. I get ready in the same order every day: shower, coffee, clothes, bag, door. I do not think about these actions anymore. My body moves without asking my heart for permission. I work in an office downtown. I sit at a desk for many hours, answering emails, checking files, fixing small problems that never truly end. When one task is finished, another one waits. My coworkers call me reliable. They say I am strong. They say I never complain. I smile and nod when they say this because it is easier than explaining the truth. Inside me, there is a quiet space that no one sees. It is not peaceful. It is empty. I do not hate my job. I do not love it either. It exists, and so do I. We pass time together. At lunch, I eat while scrolling through my phone, not looking for anything specific. I watch other people laugh and talk. I tell myself I prefer quiet. I tell myself I am fine. I have said those words so many times that they sound like facts now. I live alone. My daughter, Megan, grew up and moved out a few years ago. I helped her pack her boxes. I smiled and told her how proud I was. I meant it. I wanted her to chase her dreams. When the door closed behind her, the house became very quiet. At first, the quiet felt normal. Then it began to stretch. The rooms stopped feeling like rooms. They felt like places waiting for something to happen. In the evenings, I stay busy. I clean things that are already clean. I answer emails I could answer tomorrow. I volunteer for extra work. Being useful keeps my mind occupied. Being useful gives me a reason not to feel. When I sit still, memories arrive. I remember laughing without fear. I remember being touched with care. I remember warmth that did not need to be earned. Those memories feel distant now, like they belong to another woman. At night, I lie in bed and stare at the ceiling. The house makes small sounds that feel louder than they should. I think about the years that passed quietly. I think about how careful I have been, careful with my choices, careful with my heart, careful with my needs. I believed being careful would protect me. Instead, it made me invisible. Some nights I ask myself a question I avoid during the day. Is this all my life will be? The question sits on my chest and does not move. I whisper my own name into the dark, just to hear a voice. It sounds unfamiliar, like calling someone I lost a long time ago. I am still alive, I know that. My heart is beating, my lungs are working. But as I lie there, surrounded by quiet, another question forms. If I am alive, why do I feel so far away from my own life? I close my eyes and breathe slowly, holding on to one fragile thought. I am still alive, but am I living? In the morning, I repeat the routine again, pretending the night never happened. I tell myself this numbness is normal at my age. I tell myself wanting more is childish. Still, something inside me resists that lie. It presses gently, asking to be noticed. I carry that feeling with me through the day, through the noise, through the smiles. I do not know yet that this quiet hunger will push me to a place I never planned to go. I only know that standing still feels harder than moving, and the life I forgot is slowly asking me to remember her. She waits patiently inside me, tired of being useful, tired of being silent, tired of surviving without joy, asking one simple question I can no longer ignore. The answer is closer than I am ready today. Chapter 2. One Unexpected Night. That night, I left the office later than usual. The building was quiet, and the lights on my floor were already off. My computer screen went dark, and for a moment I stayed seated, staring at my reflection in the glass. My body felt tired, but my mind felt restless. I packed my bag slowly and walked outside. The air was cool. The street was calm. Normally, I would go straight home. That night, my feet did not move in that direction. I stood on the sidewalk and felt something unfamiliar rise in my chest. It was not excitement. It was not fear. It was a question I had been avoiding. I asked myself quietly, "What do you need right now?" The answer did not come as words. It came as a feeling. I needed noise. I needed warmth. I needed to feel human. I started walking without a clear plan. A small bar near my office glowed softly from across the street. I had passed it many times. I never went inside. It felt like a place for other people, younger people, braver people, people with stories that were still moving forward. I stopped in front of it and hesitated. My reflection stared back at me from the window. I told myself I would stay for one drink, just a pause. Just a moment. Inside, the bar was quiet, not crowded. Soft music played in the background. People talked in low voices. I sat at the counter and ordered a drink. My hands shook slightly when I lifted the glass. I noticed that before I noticed the taste. I told myself I was just resting. I watched people laugh. I watched couples lean toward each other. I felt like an observer, not a part of the room. Then someone spoke to me. He asked if the seat next to me was taken. His voice was calm, polite. I looked up and saw a young man standing there. He looked confident, but not loud. I hesitated longer than I should have. Then I said yes. He introduced himself. His name did not matter as much as how he spoke. He asked how my day was. I gave a simple answer. He listened. He did not look at his phone. He did not interrupt me. When I paused, he waited. That felt strange. That felt kind. At one point, he looked at me and said, "You look tired." Not in a judgmental way, not in a flirtatious way, just in observation. I laughed softly and said I was. Hearing someone notice that felt like being touched lightly after years of distance. We talked about small things, work, music, the weather. I did not tell him about my loneliness. I did not tell him about my empty house. I stayed on the surface, but something inside me warmed anyway. I felt seen, not admired, not desired, seen. It had been a long time since anyone looked at me without needing something from me. I reminded myself of my age. I reminded myself of my rules. I reminded myself of the quiet waiting at home. The reminders felt weak compared to the feeling of being present in that moment. Time passed without me noticing. The glass in front of me emptied. The noise in my head softened. At one point, he said something simple. He said I seemed strong but sad. The words landed gently but deeply. I told him I learned to be strong because I had no choice. He nodded, like he understood. That nod felt heavier than compliments ever could. When he asked me to dance, my heart raced. I almost said no. I thought of my house. I thought of my bed. I thought of the silence waiting for me. I stood up. My body felt nervous and light at the same time. As we moved, I felt awkward but alive. I forgot my age. I forgot my rules. I focused on the feeling of being close to another person. Later, when he leaned in, I did not stop him. I knew I was crossing a line I had drawn long ago. I knew this choice carried weight, but loneliness had sharpened my courage in the wrong direction. I chose feeling over caution. I chose relief over reflection. As we walked toward my home, a quiet voice inside me whispered to be careful. I ignored it. I told myself this was just one night. I told myself I was allowed to make a mistake. I did not think about tomorrow. I thought only about not being alone. That night, I felt warm. I felt safe. I felt young in a quiet way. I believed the morning would erase everything. I believed this choice would stay in the dark. Loneliness made me brave in the wrong way. Chapter 3. A line I should not cross. I woke up slowly the next morning, wrapped in a quiet that felt unfamiliar. For a few seconds, my body was warm and calm. Then memory returned all at once. I remembered where I was. I remembered who was beside me. My chest tightened. I turned my head and saw him sleeping. His face looked younger in the morning light, almost careless. I told myself this was only one night. I told myself it ended here. I moved carefully, trying not to wake him. I slipped out of bed and stood by the window, breathing deeply. I needed distance. I needed control. I whispered to myself, "This ends today." Saying the words made me feel steadier. I planned to speak kindly, to keep it simple, to return to my normal life without drama. I had already decided how this would go. Then I heard it, a sound that did not belong there, a key turning in the door. My body froze. My heart stopped beating for one terrible second. I knew that sound. Only one person had that key. My daughter, Megan. She was not supposed to be home until tomorrow. My hands began to shake. My thoughts crashed into each other. There was no time to think. Panic took over. I rushed back into the bedroom and whispered sharply for him to wake up. He opened his eyes slowly, confused. I grabbed his arm and said, "You have to hide, now." I did not explain. I pushed him toward the closet. He hesitated. I begged, "Please." He stepped inside. I closed the door and stood still, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure it could be heard. I forced my face into something that looked normal. I opened the door just as Megan called out, "Mom, are you awake?" Her voice sounded kind and relaxed. That made everything worse. I answered yes, my voice shaking despite my effort. She walked inside, talking about her trip, about traffic, about nothing important at all. I nodded, I smiled, I lied. Every word felt heavy. I watched her move closer to the bedroom and felt my stomach drop. I needed to stop her. I spoke too quickly, offering tea, coffee, anything. She said no and turned toward the kitchen. Relief washed over me so fast it almost made me dizzy. When she was out of sight, I opened the closet door. He stepped out quietly. I whispered that he had to leave now. No discussion, no goodbye. He nodded and walked toward the door. I followed, my body weak, my legs unsteady. I just wanted him gone. At the door, he stopped. He turned back and looked at me differently than before. His expression changed. He smiled in a way that made my skin crawl. Then he said something that burned itself into me. He spoke about my daughter, about her body, about her youth. The words hit me like fire. I felt nausea rise in my throat. Rage surged through me, sharp and sudden. Shame followed close behind. My hands shook. My stomach turned. In that moment, everything became clear. I was not embarrassed. I was not afraid of being judged. I was afraid of what I had almost allowed into my home. I pointed at the door and told him to leave. My voice shook, but my words did not. Do not ever come back. He laughed softly, like it was a joke, and walked out. I locked the door behind him and leaned against it, sliding down slowly until I was sitting on the floor. My body trembled. I felt dirty. I felt foolish. I felt broken. Not because of what I had done the night before, but because of what could have happened after. I went into the kitchen and sat with my daughter. She asked if I was okay. I smiled and said yes. That lie hurt more than any other. After she left the room, I sat alone and finally understood the truth. The real mistake was not that night. The real sin was silence. I had chosen quiet over safety. I had chosen control over honesty. I had tried to protect myself instead of protecting what mattered most. That realization pressed heavily on my chest. I promised myself it would never happen again. I believed that promise would be enough. It was not. Fear did not leave with him. It stayed behind. It settled into my thoughts, my body, my home. The doorbell rang later that week, and my heart jumped. I looked through the window and saw him standing there again, calm and confident. That was the moment I knew something had changed forever. I crossed the line, and fear walked in. Chapter 4. When Fear Knocked. Fear did not arrive with shouting or broken doors. It arrived politely. It arrived calmly. A few days after that morning, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I did not want to see again. My hands went cold before I even opened it. He wrote as if nothing was wrong. He said he needed money. Just a little. Just this once. I stared at the screen for a long time. I told myself it would end if I agreed. I told myself paying was easier than explaining. I went to the bank, withdrew cash meant for bills, and handed it to him without meeting his eyes. He smiled and thanked me. He walked away like this was normal. It was not over. The next week, he came back. This time he asked for more. His voice was still calm, but something underneath it had changed. When I hesitated, his smile disappeared. He leaned closer and said the words that would follow me everywhere. I can tell your daughter everything. My heart dropped into my stomach. The threat was quiet, but it was sharp. I felt trapped between two fears, losing my daughter's trust or losing my sense of safety. I chose the one that felt less painful in the moment. I paid him again. Fear began to organize my life. I started checking the door every night, once, twice, 3 times. I listened for footsteps in the hallway. I jumped when my phone rang. I waited for his messages like they were appointments I could not cancel. Waiting became a habit. Fear became routine. I stopped sleeping well. When I did sleep, my dreams were filled with keys turning in locks and voices calling my name. I woke up tired in a way rest could not fix. At work, I smiled and answered emails, but my mind was always somewhere else. I made mistakes I never used to make. I felt smaller every day. I began lying without thinking. When my daughter asked simple questions, my heart raced. I answered quickly, carefully, choosing words like stepping around glass. I avoided her eyes. Every lie took something from me. My peace, my confidence, my self-respect. He learned how to control the rhythm of my fear. Sometimes he waited days before contacting me. The silence was worse than the messages. I checked my phone constantly, my body tense, my thoughts racing. When he finally wrote, I felt relief mixed with dread. Fear had trained me well. One evening, I opened my wallet and felt ashamed. The money inside was meant for groceries, for rent, for normal life. I whispered to myself, "What are you doing?" Tears filled my eyes, but I wiped them away. Crying felt useless. Silence felt safer. Then he crossed another line. He began using my daughter's name, casually, like it meant nothing. Hearing it from his mouth made my chest tighten. I felt sick. I realized then that this was no longer about money. It was about power, about control, about how quiet fear can become dangerous. I tried to stand up to him once. I told him he had to stop. My voice sounded weak, even to me. He laughed softly and said, "You will call me when you are ready." Then he ended the call. After that, I sat alone on my couch and stared at the wall. I felt exhausted, not physically, spiritually. I thought about how my life had shrunk, how fear had moved into every room. I thought about how carefully I was living and how unsafe I still felt. One night, I looked at myself in the mirror and spoke out loud. "This is not your life." The words felt dangerous. Fear answered back immediately. It said, "If you speak, you will lose everything." I held my head in my hands and cried quietly. Then I remembered my daughter as a child. I remembered her trusting eyes. I remembered how she used to say, "Mom, you always fix things." That memory hurt. I felt like I had failed her, not because I made a mistake, but because I was hiding. I understood something then. Silence was not protecting her. Silence was protecting him. The next time he called, his voice was colder. He said he needed money again. When I said I did not have it, he replied calmly, "Then I will talk." That threat broke something inside me. I ended the call and sat very still. My breathing slowed. My heart was loud. I thought about living like this forever. I thought about fear knocking on my door every day. I felt tired of opening it. That night, I made a quiet decision. I would not fight alone anymore. The truth scared me, but fear scared me more. Chapter 5. The Truth I Hid. I did not sleep that night. Fear sat inside my chest like a weight I could not move. Every sound felt louder than it should. Every shadow felt close. I knew I could not continue like this. I was tired of checking the door, tired of waiting for messages, tired of lying to the person I loved the most. By morning, one truth was clear. Silence had already taken too much from me. My daughter was in the kitchen when I woke up. She moved around the room easily, unaware of the storm inside me. She trusted me. That trust felt heavy in my hands. I watched her for a long moment and almost gave up. Silence felt easier. Silence felt familiar. But silence had brought me here. I asked her to sit with me. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. She looked at me closely and said, "Mom, what's wrong?" That simple question broke something open inside me. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. I took a deep breath and told her I needed to tell her something important. The words came slowly at first. I told her about the loneliness I had been carrying for years. I told her how empty the house felt after she moved out. I told her how tired I felt inside, even when my life looked fine from the outside. My voice shook, but I kept going. Then I told her about that night. I did not try to make excuses. I did not try to sound strong. I said I made a bad choice because I felt invisible. Shame burned my face as I spoke. I expected her to pull away. I expected anger. I expected disappointment. She did not interrupt me. She reached for my hand and held it. That small act made me cry harder than anything else. I told her about him, about how he came back, about the money, about the threats. When I said her name, my body shook. I told her how he used my fear of losing her. I told her everything. When I finished, I felt empty and exposed. I waited for her reaction. My heart beat so hard I could hear it. She took a slow breath and looked at me with steady eyes. Then she said something I did not expect. "Mom, why did you carry this alone?" Her voice was calm, not angry. That question stayed with me. I whispered that I wanted to protect her. She shook her head gently and said, "You don't protect me by hurting yourself." Those words landed deeply. They felt true in a way nothing else had. She told me I was not a bad person. She said I made a mistake, but mistakes do not erase who we are. I had blamed myself every day. Hearing her say that felt unreal. I told her how scared I had been. She said she knew. We talked for a long time. She asked questions and I answered honestly. I did not hide anything anymore. Each truth I spoke felt heavy, but also freeing. The fear that had lived quietly inside me began to lose its shape. It no longer belonged only to me. Then she said the words that changed everything. "We stop him together." Together. That word shifted the room. I was no longer alone with my fear. I was no longer carrying the secret in the dark. Fear hates witnesses. It needs silence to grow. Now it had none. We talked about what to do next. We planned calmly. There was no panic in her voice. She was clear. She was strong. Her strength did not come from anger. It came from truth. Seeing that gave me strength too. I felt lighter after that conversation, not because the danger was gone, but because I was no longer hiding. The weight in my chest loosened. I could breathe again. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself. Later, when I sat alone, I thought about everything that had happened. I thought about how silence had promised safety and delivered fear. I thought about how telling the truth had terrified me, but also saved me. That night, I slept better than I had in a long time. Fear was still there, but it no longer owned me. I understood something important then. Silence did not protect us. Truth did. Chapter 6. Standing Together. He came back on a quiet afternoon, just as I expected. The doorbell rang once, sharp and confident, like he already belonged there. My heart jumped, but I did not freeze this time. I looked at my daughter. She looked back at me and nodded slightly. We were ready. When I opened the door, he stood there with the same relaxed smile, the same casual posture. He expected fear. He expected silence. He expected me to step aside and let him in without a word. He spoke as if nothing had changed. "You know what I want," he said calmly. Before I could answer, my daughter stepped forward. "You will not speak to my mother like that," she said. Her voice was steady. Not loud, not angry, clear. He looked surprised, then confused. He laughed softly and said, "This is private." She did not move. She did not raise her voice. She said, "There are no secrets anymore." That sentence shifted the room. I felt it in my chest. The secret was gone. The thing he had been holding over me no longer existed. He turned his attention back to me, waiting for my silence to return. It didn't. My hands were shaking, but I spoke anyway. "You used my fear," I said. My voice trembled, but the words were firm. "You threatened my family. It ends today." For a moment, he tried to recover control. He said I still owed him. He said I had no proof. He said no one would believe me. Each sentence sounded weaker than the last. Fear was no longer feeding him. My daughter stepped closer to me. "You owe us nothing," she said, "and if you come back, we will tell everyone." He tried one last time. He smiled and said, "I can tell your daughter everything." She looked at him and answered without hesitation, "I already know everything." Silence filled the space between us. His face changed. I saw it clearly. The confidence left him. The power he thought he had disappeared. He had nothing left to threaten us with. He stood there for a few seconds, searching for something to say. Then he turned and walked away. No shouting, no violence, just footsteps moving farther and farther from the door. When the door closed, my knees weakened. I sat down slowly, my body finally releasing the tension it had been holding for weeks. My hands shook, but this time it was not fear, it was relief. My daughter sat beside me and held my shoulders. I whispered, "Is it really over?" She answered softly, "Yes." That word felt unreal. Tears came, quiet ones, the kind that arrive when something heavy finally lifts. I leaned into her and cried without shame. She held me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. We stayed there together for a while, not talking much. We did not need to. The silence was different now. It did not press on my chest. It did not demand anything. It simply existed. I understood something important in that moment. Fear had never been as strong as I thought. It only felt strong because I carried it alone. When I shared it, it shrank. When I spoke, it lost its shape. That night, I slept deeply. When I woke up the next morning, my chest felt lighter. The danger was gone, but the healing was just beginning. I knew there would still be memories. There would still be moments when my heart raced. But fear no longer controlled my life. I looked at my daughter and felt gratitude fill me. Not because she saved me, but because she stood with me. Strength was not loud. Courage was not dramatic. It was standing still and refusing to be silent. I learned something I will never forget. Fear needs silence. It dies in the light. Chapter 7. I chose the truth. After he left, silence returned to my life. But it was not the same silence I had lived with for years. This silence did not press on my chest or follow me from room to room. It did not make me feel small or invisible. It felt calm. It felt like space. For the first time, quiet did not scare me. Healing did not arrive all at once. There was no sudden happiness, no moment where everything felt fixed. Some mornings I woke up feeling strong. I made breakfast, opened the windows, and felt present in my body. Other mornings I felt tired again. My chest felt heavy and old fear tried to whisper its way back in. I learned not to fight those days. I learned to let them pass. I stopped pretending I was fine all the time. When I felt weak, I said so. When I felt afraid, I named it. Speaking honestly did not make the fear stronger. It made it smaller. I began to understand that healing is not about never feeling pain again. It is about no longer hiding from it. I returned to my routine, but I was not the same woman. I still worked at the same office. I still answered emails and solved small problems, but I no longer used work to disappear. When my body felt tired, I rested. When my heart felt full, I allowed it. I did not punish myself for needing care. For years, I believed my value came from being useful. I believed if I helped enough, gave enough, stayed quiet enough, I would be safe. Now I saw how wrong that was. Being useful had kept me busy, but it had not kept me whole. I began rebuilding my identity slowly, not as someone who exists to serve, but as someone who deserves respect. Forgiving myself was the hardest part. My mind returned to that night again and again. I replayed my choices, my fear, my silence. I wanted to blame myself for everything, but I learned something important. A mistake is not a definition. One bad decision does not erase a lifetime of strength. I was not broken. I was human. I spoke to myself differently now. When shame appeared, I answered it with truth. I said, "You survived." When fear returned, I reminded myself, "You spoke." Each time I chose honesty, I felt a little stronger, not louder, stronger. My daughter stayed close. She did not watch me with worry. She watched me with trust. One evening, she said something that stayed with me. She said, "You don't have to carry everything anymore." I realized how long I had been carrying too much. I let myself put it down. I learned that courage is not always dramatic. Courage is not shouting or fighting. Sometimes courage is sitting at a table and telling the truth. Sometimes it is admitting you are afraid. Sometimes it is asking for help before fear grows teeth. Life did not turn into a fairy tale. There was no new romance, no perfect ending. But there was peace. There was sleep without checking the door. There was silence that felt like rest instead of punishment. There was a sense of self-respect I had not felt in years. I looked at my reflection one morning and did not look away. I saw a woman who had fallen and stood back up, a woman who chose truth over comfort, a woman who found her voice after years of silence. I understand something clearly now. One bad night didn't ruin me. Years of silence almost did. Young and soft, young female with American accent. If you are listening to this story and you feel scared, please hear this clearly. You are not weak for feeling afraid. You are not wrong for hiding pain you did not know how to carry. Many people live quietly with heavy hearts, believing silence will protect them. But silence grows heavier over time. If something inside you feels unsafe, lonely, or trapped, you do not have to carry it alone. You do not need perfect words. You do not need a perfect plan. You only need one person who can listen. Telling the truth does not destroy your life. It gives you space to breathe again. If you are hiding something because you feel ashamed, remember this. Shame grows in silence, but it shrinks when spoken. Fear feels powerful when it is private. It loses power when it is shared. You deserve safety, honesty, and peace, no matter your age or your past. Take a slow breath. Stay here for a moment, and when you are ready, tell someone you trust. You do not have to be brave all at once. You only need to take one honest step. If this story touched you, please support it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who may need these words today, and tell us in the comments which chapter felt most real to you and why. Your voice matters.